You're listening to JetNation Radio, the official podcast of JetNation.com, the largest independent fan site in the NFL. Be sure to check out our forums and talk all things Jets with thousands of other diehard Jets fans. Now, to get you up to date on all the latest Jets news, notes, and quotes, here are your hosts, Glenn Naughton and Alex Varallo.
Good evening, Jets fans. I am Glenn Naughton. This is JetNation Radio. I am joined, thankfully, by my co-host, Alex Varallo. Because, Alex, we got some stuff to talk about tonight, don't we?
Indeed we do.
Some craziness just in the last half hour, 45 minutes, whatever it is. Manish Mehta of the New York Daily News breaking the story that the New York Jets have been contacted by Jamal Adams, all-pro safety Jamal Adams, to seek permission to find a trade partner. The Jets, according to Manish Mehta, have not granted that to Adams as of yet. And Alex, I mean, we saw this coming many miles away. You and I spoke just a few minutes ago very briefly, and I'd said to you that I remembered thinking back to last year at the deadline, when the rumors were swirling, when Jamal Adams' feelings were clearly very hurt. I said that once Ryan Clark, I believe it was Ryan Clark, who went on the air at ESPN, even after, I believe the deadline had passed, like the trade clearly wasn't going to happen, but or maybe it was still up in the air. Whatever it was, Ryan Clark went on the air at ESPN and said, I've spoken to Jamal Adams, and he's happy about the fact that he's going to be a Cowboy, or something to that effect. This stuff doesn't happen by accident. Ryan Clark's an ex-player. Jamal Adams, current player. They know how to sort of measure their words very carefully. Everything is crafted, designed. This, to me, was an attempt to get it out there that Jamal Adams did want to be a Cowboy this offseason. I said at that time, Alex, I thought a deal would happen this offseason, which it didn't. But I've said many times, I want Jamal signed long-term. I want him here. I want him to stay. But I've kind of known deep down that it would at least come to this point. And this is why, Alex, a couple months ago, I can't remember the tweet, but Jamal Adams tweeted something a couple months ago that I said something. I was like, hey, this is a big deal. And a lot of people, it's nothing. You're making something out of nothing. This is no big deal. Doesn't mean anything. This happens all the time. Oh, that's it. It was the training camp that he wasn't going to attend the virtual workouts, the voluntary virtual workouts, which a lot of people said I was being silly for making note of it. Players do this all the time. And I just kind of said, how many players do this a couple of days? I think it was because he said a couple of days before the draft. I think that was my thinking. I said they are entering the most premium time of the season, like the peak, the point at which a trade is most likely, a day or two before the draft, was when it was announced by his people that he would not be attending voluntary workouts. That to me was Jamal saying, this is the chance to trade me, so I'm going to put it out there that I'm not going to work out with you guys. And I think he wanted out from that point, if not sooner. Went into denial over it because I don't want the guy to go. Denial. But with every tweet, with every jab, with every shot, we've talked about it, Alex. He not a single tweet to any of his new teammates that got drafted. He tweeted Christian McCaffrey, congratulations on your new big contract, Christian. Another player, I forget who, congrats on your deal. And then, who was it? Myles Garrett the other day, congratulations on your new contract. So he didn't congratulate one single new teammate, but he congratulated every dude who got a new contract. And then just a day or two ago, tweeted out a video of CeeDee Lamb of the Cowboys working out, like, oh yeah, this dude's going to get it this year. I'm like, this dude is like actively cheering for Cowboys players and dudes getting contracts and saying not a word to his new teammates. That's all by design. That's not by accident. You think he just accidentally didn't tweet, I think he did a day or two after the draft. He tweeted out like a list of every player and was like, welcome to New York. But none like last offseason, It was like, let's go get it. Welcome to New York. Like individual, each guy, welcome to the Jets. We're going to get after it. We're going to do this. None of that this year. So the majority of his social media activity has been, I want a deal, congratulating everyone else who got a deal, and celebrating Cowboys draft picks more than he's celebrating his own teammates' draft picks. So the guy wants out. That's been clear for a while. Like I said, I kind of lived in denial for a little bit. And now, Alex, and I'll let you speak here in a second. I didn't mean to ramble on this long. But obviously we're both going to say our piece on this. Calvin Watkins, former Jets writer for Newsday, now covers the Cowboys. And he's got sources telling him that Jamal Adams or Jamal's camp, wherever he's getting the info, saying that Jamal Adams would be happy to play with a few other teams where he would not demand a deal right away. That's the writing on the wall, folks. He is currently a Jet under contract with the Jets. Jets have control of him for minimum 2 years up to, and could be more than that, with franchise tags. And he's saying, if I feel right now, I want out. But, oh, by the way, there are some teams that you can trade me to, and I'm not in any rush to get a deal. Because I would actually like to be in those places. So I'll give them a little bit of freedom. Jets don't get any freedom. Jets don't get any benefit of the doubt. Jets don't get any, there was one more aspect I want to touch on, Alex. Or actually, you know what? You go say your piece, and then I had one more aspect that I wanted to address in terms of what Jamal has been saying and tweeting about the whole situation. Alex, take it away.
I am not well, Jet Nation. This is not good. Glenn, you put it out there, the timeline of everything that's been going on, and the writing's been on the wall for quite some time, and I'm a pretty stubborn individual myself, and I've been fighting the good fight, as I always do, for these players that I covet, and I always end up losing, I've come to see. So, like I said before, I'm not committing to any new players anymore moving forward. That's my new thing. But anyway, this is completely unfortunate that things have spiraled out of control like this. I'm very displeased with the way Jamal's actually handling himself, and this is coming from someone that is a huge, huge fan of him. I was pounding the table for him. The draft came around, and I remember debating with people with him over Malik Hooker and, just kind of just getting into these fun debates with everybody, and it felt like a huge win on draft night when he became a Jet. And, clearly this relationship was completely tarnished, and we all saw that during the trade deadline last year. We saw how he reacted, the way he changed his social media status on all his platforms, removing everything that was Jets, and then lying about it in public, saying that he never had anything associated with Jets, and the internet does not lie. Everyone keeps receipts, and people screenshotted his account prior to him making those changes on Instagram and Twitter. And so the writing's been on the wall for quite some time. And, Joe Douglas clearly felt that he was losing the fan base and everyone was in an uproar. I remember, for some reason, I have October 21st in my head was the deadline of last year. So that whole week prior to it, we all know and we all remember how crazy that time was. And, Jamal hasn't forgotten about it. He was very upset. He didn't talk to Adam Gase. He didn't talk to Joe Douglas. People asked him and on the beat, have you spoken to him? He said, nope, I'm not ready for that. And as you said, those are not things that leaders do. Those are not things that men do that put the team first. Actions speak louder than words, and he says the right things, but we can tell that he is not performing or handling things like a leader does. You don't earn a captain responsibility and then not show up to these, I don't care, mandatory, not mandatory. You're a captain. You should be there. You should be participating. We understand we went through this with Bell and we water this down every year. I think we need to stop watering things down and making excuses for these players, because look at what happened. Look at what we're dealing with right now. We have one of the best defensive players in the league on our team, and within 1 year, the new personnel in the front office, Adam Gase included, because he was the one that chose Joe Douglas, okay, and Joe Douglas has the rights and he has the authority to manipulate this roster as he pleases. That's what Chris Johnson allowed him to do. And we know last year when Gase was pressed about questions with Bell, go ask Joe. Because he clearly, either he just doesn't want to deal with those tough questions, or in reality, Gase no longer has that type of control anymore. Don't really know. I guess we'll never really know until all these people leave the team. But this is a travesty. And it's unfortunate that things spiraled out of control. Joe Douglas told everybody. He told the whole world after the trade deadline passed, because let's be honest, he did not need to show face and have a press conference. We hadn't seen him address the media probably since that first or second week when he got the job back in late May or June or whatever the date was. So he didn't need to come out and say anything, but he felt that he needed to. And then he told us this story of how we answer calls, and everybody bought it. He told us that he was going to make Jamal Adams a Jet for life. We have not seen that yet to date. In his off-season, after the 2019 season, he addressed the media. He said that was one of the priorities, is making Jamal Adams a Jet for life. We have yet to see that. Tremaine Johnson was let go a couple weeks ago. We got $11 million back on the cap. We found room to give him more money. We still haven't done that. And now, if you do try to make him a deal, it's going to have to be an absurd contract, because the writing's on the wall. The relationship has clearly been tarnished, and I don't know if money at this point is going to, save grace here with this situation. We saw the way Jamal represented himself when they were on a losing streak last year. This ain't me. I'm not a loser. This doesn't represent me. Well, you represent New York, and you represent this team, and you're part of this team. And in your mind, you may not feel like you were a loser, but you were part of a losing team. But you said that you were here to make changes and that you were going to help this team win football games. And now you want to leave. And you're still under contract, and the Jets have rights to you for this year, for next year. And like you said, when you and I were talking, they could tag him for the next couple of years too if they felt like it, because that is their right as them selecting him in the first round. So this is just a terrible situation in my mind. I'm a little disgusted. I'm a little distraught. At the end of the day, this is the way I feel. I want players that want to be here on this team through thick and thin, through good times, through bad, all that stuff. I want guys that are all in, that want to be on this team and want to win. And right now, number 33 is not showing that. He's not showing that to his fan base. He can say whatever he wants. He can, put out his cryptic tweets or whatever. We're not buying it anymore. And everyone's upset. And all you have to do is just check into social media and Google his name, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about.
Absolutely. We're going to go to the phones real quick, take this caller, and then I'm going to have another thought on something that Jamal Adams said. Caller, you're on the air.
Hey, what's going on, y'all?
How we doing?
Yeah, I'm good, man. How y'all?
Doing good. What are you thinking about tonight?
Yeah, man. I don't know. I don't like the idea of fan bases getting mad at the player. Whatever happens between the relationship between the player and the front office, these things happen, man. You're not getting married. You draft a guy, things don't work out, you move on. You get what you can in compensation for him, and you move on. Like I think bad franchises engage in this stuff where they're trying to, nickel and dime a guy, or they're trying to afterwards settle a score by keeping them longer and stuff like that. To me, the good franchises, especially in positions like safety, where you're not going to get Jamal Adams equivalent, but you're going to get a solid starter in that spot. So I would say you move on. You make the trade. No harm, no foul. It is what it is. But to me, the bigger problem has always been the idea of Adam Gase, especially Adam Gase empowered within an organization. To me, that was a mistake from day one. And we're continuing to see issues that kind of, fall apart from just based on that ultimate decision. But Adams has proven to be a really good player. But is he a franchise player who you can't do without? Or if you don't get adequate compensation, your franchise is ruined? No. He's a premier safety. But, it is what it is. You continue building, and just don't put good money after bad money. You just keep moving and keep building. Don't take any of this stuff personal, because we have no idea how contentious it got behind the scenes between these two parties. So there's no reason to even pick a side.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point with. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Alex.
I want to ask who. What's your name? Who are we addressing here?
That is Naj.
I'm sorry?
Naj.
Well, thank you for calling in. And, man, what you just said there kind of gave me a little bit of perspective. But, thank you for calling in. And I just wanted to know who you were. But, Glenn, go ahead with your question.
No, I was just going to say, in regards to the Adam Gase thing, that to me, and I'm sure I've said it on the air a couple times, Alex, when the non-trade happened last year or during the season, and Adams was publicly upset with Gase and Douglas, and we remember him standing in front of his locker, saying he had only spoken to Chris Johnson because he can trust him. So he was sort of not implying, he was basically saying he didn't trust Gase and Douglas without saying those exact words. Just basically saying, I'm not speaking to them, but I spoke to Chris because I trust Chris. At that moment, that's when I was kind of looking at Adam Gase's history in Miami and how he got rid of some of his best players if they were causing friction in the locker room or if there were effort issues on the field. That's obviously not an Adams thing. But sort of, I thought, if he's got a guy in his locker room standing in front of the cameras saying, I don't trust the coach and the GM, I was like, this I think is going to fester with Adam Gase. And I'm, as we know, I am not a Gase guy. I didn't want the hire. I don't want him here now. The bottom line is he is here. I think Joe Douglas, in order to be able to retain or fire Adam Gase in the future, is going to try to do as much as he can that Adam Gase wants him to do, to be able to say, listen, dude, I gave you everything you wanted. Now, this can be a point of contention because I believe Joe Douglas wants Jamal Adams to stay around. I really do. But, and this kind of, the other point I was going to make was in terms of Jamal, and I agree, Naj, like to get upset at a player personally, that's kind of taking it over the top. We get frustrated as fans, and we hate to see it. Listen, as Jets fans, I talked about this a few weeks ago. This team rarely drafts good players, and it seems like when they do, they get traded. We saw it with Keyshawn. We saw it with Revis. We're about to see it would appear with Jamal at some point. So they don't draft a lot of all-pro, elite caliber players, and when they do, they let them go, whereas other teams seem to find a way to keep those guys. But again, Jamal said on Twitter or Instagram, whatever it was, he didn't want to hear it because he didn't want to hear about the COVID thing because the Panthers gave McCaffrey a huge extension. And my thought on that is one has nothing to do with the other. First of all, I'm sure McCaffrey got his deal before everything went completely nuts. No one was thinking there wouldn't be fans in the stadium. And even if they had, even if everything was equal now to what it is now, every team's cap situation is going to be different. Every team is going to have their own outlook on what they're expecting next year. I mean, listen, if you and your neighbor have the same job and roughly the same income, and you both find out you might be getting laid off, and your neighbor goes out and spends $100,000 on a new car, does that mean you should do the same thing? And be like, oh, well, the wife wants a new car and my neighbor just bought one, so why shouldn't I? So what if we might be getting laid off? Listen, if your neighbor wants to be an irresponsible idiot, let him. That doesn't mean that you're obliged, obligated to do the same thing. So for Jamal Adams to say, I don't want to hear about COVID and the pandemic because McCaffrey got his money, that's how the Panthers handled it. Maybe Joe Douglas is being more prudent. Maybe Joe Douglas is saying, listen, there's rumors of a drop in cap space by $60, $70 million. We might be looking at $20 million in cap space instead of $80 or $90 million. I can't afford to give you a $9 or $10 or $11 million pay raise. So to say that the Jets should pay Jamal because one team was reckless and paid one of their guys, that's foolish. That's beyond foolish. You don't say that, just because one team did a reckless thing, I don't want to hear that my team can't do a reckless thing. But anyway, Naj, did you have anything else to add to that?
Well, to the argument of a guy who wants his money. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's going to be self-serving no matter what. So, of course, Jamal is going to say that because he wants the money. But honestly, like just getting into what you were just saying, positionally, can you pay a safety that amount of money, period? Even if let's say Jamal was 1 times better than what he is, even better than what he is right now, could you still justify that much money at that position? I don't know. Unless we're watching Ed Reed or Troy Polamalu, I don't know if you can actually do that. So,
I
just
really
think
that
you need
depends.
to explore what package you can get for him and keep it moving, man. And it probably would have been better to trade him before all of this started, before people start trying to, use this as a way to push down, the value you get back.
Listen, I've kind of been at the point for a while now, having said a million times I want Jamal back, that I would be just as happy if I feel like they can get equal value in a trade. And speaking of that, by the way, I hadn't mentioned this yet. I hadn't seen the list. Apparently, just before we came on the air, Alex, I don't know if you saw this, Adam Schefter tweeted out what he is claiming from a source, the teams that Jamal Adams has said he will go to where he will not request, this just said 7 teams where Jamal Adams will welcome a trade. And the common thread here is that these are all teams on the cusp of winning a Super Bowl. So Jamal Adams is saying Ravens, Cowboys, Texans, Chiefs, Eagles, 49ers, Seahawks. All playoff teams, all top contenders. Even teams like the Cowboys, who haven't been great of late, have loaded up. People are expecting big things there. So obviously he wants to go to a team that he feels like is a lock for the postseason. But listen, obviously, everyone wants to go. If you want to get paid and you get to choose where you want to go, you're going to want to go to a team that's on the cusp, and that's understandable. But the Jets hold all the cards. And Naj, thanks for calling in. I really appreciate it. And I agree. I think that the Jets they need to I think they need to make a deal. You too now. Take care. Yeah, a deal would. I wouldn't be upset. I think part of it too is that it's been a long time in the it's been in the headlines long enough, long times in the making, with Jamal wanting to force his way out of town. And one thing that Naj said that someone else just tweeted at me, and I understand, you can't pay a safety that money, you can't, but we have to be fair here, Alex. Whether you like Jamal Adams or not, he is more than a safety. Yep. He plays the slot and he plays it well. He covers tight ends, he covers them well. He can get to the quarterback, he can stuff the run. This is why he's an all-pro. This is why someone is an obscene amount of money. He's not just a safety. And for any defensive coordinator,
he wouldn't have as many suitors if he was just a safety, because everybody waters down this position as if it's easily replaced, and you can find guys to be box safeties anywhere. Well, if that's the case, then why are teams interested in Jamal Adams if they can replicate that simplification that you claim that he is? I mean, I think it was just Carl. He was the ex-Giant. I'm sorry.
Carl Banks?
Carl Banks just said, for all you people that just say, no worries, let him go, he's just a box safety. Well, when he goes, you will see the difference to what just a box safety is. You will see a Calvin Pryor-style player that's supposed to be this big hitter that gets beat by athletic tight ends, that chooses poor angles in the run game and lets up, third and long situations for first downs, and the chains keep moving. I could go on and on about, these one-dimensional style players at that position. But you're talking about a multifaceted player, and there's only a few of them that can do what he can do. There's not even more than 5 players in this league that can do what Jamal Adams can do. Yeah, and that's the reality of the situation.
As I say all the time when I get into these arguments with people, and listen, sometimes I'm wrong. I can tell you right now, I certainly
we own up to it.
Right now to a decent contract, but I always say, wait till he gets his contract, and then you tell me if he gets paid like just a safety. For all these people, and especially people call him a box safety. I mean, come on. If he was just a box safety, then you could just pay Rontez Miles to do that job. But he's not just a box safety. He's much more than that. He's an all-pro player. If he keeps playing the way he does, he's going to be a Hall of Fame player. I get that. But as I said, man, I did the quick little blog post on it when I saw the story and said Jets might be asking more of Ashton Davis a lot sooner than we expected, And Jamal Adams, listen, it's a shame if he does get traded, but the reality of the situation is that he wants to go. Now, the one thing worth looking at, Alex, and this will be the last thing so we can close out and do a 53-man roster projection. I look at it and kind of say, what does he think the team will do? Does Jamal Adams think that the team is just going to bow to whatever he demands? Or are they going to stand firm, in which case, and this is something I said to you before we came on, the new CBA has increased the penalty for holding out, which I was aware of. It's now $40,000 a day. But one thing I'd forgotten till I looked it up the other day, because I remember hearing this when the new CBA was first sort of explained, is that teams can no longer forgive those fines and return that money to the player. So $40,000 a day, if he holds out for a couple months, that's a hell of a lot of money. That's a huge chunk of what he would have been getting with his new contract. And then if he doesn't get the deal, what if he holds out for a couple months, Joe Douglas doesn't budge, and then he's got to come back in order to get his full year of service, and then he loses a ton of money. And then the Jets don't give him a deal next year. My thought is this, Alex. I think Joe Douglas does want to pay him. I think he wants to wait till next offseason when they're that much closer to the end of his deal and to see what he does in this defense with Greg Williams, with new pieces added, and to see if he's worth the money. They probably realize. They're probably looking at him saying, going to give this guy the biggest deal in the NFL for a safety because he's much more than a safety. So let's see him do it again for another year. Let's see if he can be this impact guy who makes plays consistently, and then pay him. But as Rich Cimini pointed out months ago, Jamal Adams made it clear at the end of the season that he wanted a new deal this offseason. I don't think it's going to happen. And I think using the Ed McCaffrey comparison is ridiculous. And I think the fact that he's saying, here are some teams I will go to and not demand a new deal, that tells me he doesn't want to be a Jet. So, as the world turns, we will see where this lands. And
here's my final thing. What is the most upsetting about it is if you're truly upset and you're a professional athlete and this is a business because, he realized, he's a young player. He acted emotionally. He said, I forgot, this isn't just a game and something that I love. I forgot that there's a business side to this too. So he had to do a little growing up and maturing last year, but you can see that he hasn't really learned much from that because now, he's acting impatient and, it's not like, there's a lot of other people that are in a lot worse situations than you are at this point in time financially. So, it's just very, very odd. But I'm very displeased about the way he handled himself on social media. And you gave in to these trolls. And I understand. You could tell that he gave in because I've seen people say, Pat Mahomes won a Super Bowl. He's in, his third year. He's not demanding big money. Well, that's Pat Mahomes' stance on it. Pat Mahomes doesn't want to fight for himself, but he probably also has a good agent that says, "Hey, man, you got a Super Bowl ring. You're one of the top players now, the face of the NFL. You've got all these great endorsements. You're set for life if you walked away from the sport right now as we speak. But when your big payday comes, you're probably going to be the highest paid quarterback in the history of the game." So he understands that playing the slow game is going to work for him. But Jamal commented about that, so you can tell that enough people have been saying that for him to react to it because his Instagram post, they said, I have time today. And that's when I knew, when I read that first line, I said, this is going to be bad. So I'm just upset about the way he handled himself. And, we said this. I saw that Alex Smith thing and how crazy the 16 surgeries he went through his leg. And I said, I'll never, ever question a player asking for more money in this game. I've got no problem with Jamal Adams wanting to be paid, but I don't like the manner in which he's handling it. If you're upset with anybody, fire your agent. If your agent hasn't been able to find a deal, or if it's Joe Douglas that, we know Joe Douglas is stingy. He's Mr. 1-year deal from what we've seen, and he's not paying big contracts from what we've seen. So we know that Joe Douglas is tight with his wallet, so that could be one thing. We also know that Jamal thinks very high of himself and he wants a huge mega deal. And we also know that Joe Douglas hasn't done that, so that may not be what he wants to do. And, the third factor is that he's got poor representation at this point in time. So that's where I would go. Go after your agent. Tweet at text your agent all that craziness. But giving into social media shows weakness, and it shows a lack of leadership, like we said. So let's move on. And, I guess to be determined within the next few days on how this all pans out.
All right, Alex. We will see how it goes. And before we move on to our 53-man roster, Alex, let's take just a second to thank our sponsor, Miles Social. Miles Social, if you are a business owner and you're looking for someone to help you run all of your company's social media platforms, check out milesocial.com. That's MILE social.com. Whether it's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, whatever it may be, Miles Social has got you covered. Check them out. Like I said, Miles Social, MILE social.com. Give them a look. All right, Alex. So we haven't done 53. We normally do it, a little while before training camp and then again near the end of camp. So we'll roll right into it. I mean, they're going to be. I'm not going to lie, man. There were some spots, some positions. I had a really tough time.
Likewise.
I put guys on the roster and took them off. There's part of me, I'm like, are they going to carry 4 running backs? They might carry 4 because I think Brant Boyer is going to, as we like to say, pound the table for Trenton Cannon because he's been a phenomenal coverage guy. But then I think, there's holes elsewhere. You drafted Perrin, you got Gore, you have Bell. Do you need a 4th back? So again, this is just for fun. And starting off,
here's something that's interesting too.
Go ahead.
And I took this into factor when I was kind of putting together my little quick 53 here. They are talking about extending the practice squad.
Yes.
Anywhere
I
from 5 to maybe even 10 players due to COVID.
Yes.
So let's keep that in mind when we do this, that there's about 10 players that are on the bubble here that could possibly be on the, I guess we should call it the 73. But
I think Schefter. Yeah, Schefter or Rappaport tweeted yesterday that they'd talk about expanding it to 16, from 10 to 16. So, actually, had they bumped it to 12 for the new CBA? I forget now.
And who knows about the out of league program where we had rugby players and things like that too. So who knows if they're going to get somebody to do that this year?
Yeah, we'll have to see how it goes, but. Starting it off, and there are some guys right off the bat that I know that I'm looking at and thinking, I think this guy's probably a practice squad guy, so I'm not going to have him on the roster, but I think he'll stick in another way. But of course, at quarterback, I'm going Darnold, Flacco, and I'm going to say that Morgan's going to come up with a mystery injury and spend the season on IR. Sit back and learn, because honestly, if you're down to Morgan during the season's over anyway. So have Darnold, have Flacco. With Morgan on IR, and maybe a Mike White or somebody like that on the practice squad, and go from there. So I'm going Darnold, Flacco, 2 roster spots at quarterback, with 1 guy spending a season on IR.
Kind of similar to what you had there. So I'm going to say that James makes the team, and they go with 3, and James will be the glorified clip holder this year. So I have them going with 3 quarterbacks into the season.
And you broke up there. It was Darnold, Flacco, and what do you have Morgan making?
And Morgan. I have Morgan making it as the glorified clipboard holder this year.
Okay, gotcha. So, some of these are super obvious. They won't take a lot of explanation. Running back, I got Bell, Gore, and Perrin. I think that, Bell is going to be much better off this season with a better offensive line. Will he be the same Bell he was in Pittsburgh? Probably not. Hopefully Adam Gase has decided to use him out of the slot a little bit more as a receiver and actually target him there. Let him make some plays, not just out of the backfield. And those are my 3. Like I said, Cannon's a guy that I was like, I think Brant Boyer is really going to want him. I had him on my original roster, but I wanted to go with a 7th receiver instead of a 4th running back because I think At this point, I'm saying go ahead and prioritize receivers. Not enough experience there. So I went with one extra receiver instead of one extra back. Who have you got at running back, Alex?
I have the same three as you, Bell, Gore, and P. Ryan. Unfortunately, Trent Cannon is going to find himself maybe on the practice squad, but I could see him get picked up by probably the Patriots.
All right. And at receiver, like I said, I went with 7. I'm going with Perriman, Mims, Crowder, Smith, and then I Doxson was the guy that I had off, then I put him on, then I took him off. I eventually settled on him making the roster because he at least has some NFL experience. And, he's put up 500 yards in a couple different seasons, so he can do a little bit for you. Berrios, I think, is a guy who, as well as he did on specials as a return man, one of the top guys in the NFL last year. And I think if he develops as a receiver, he's got a shot. So I'm sticking with Berrios, and then of the undrafted free agents, I've got Cager making the roster. So Perriman, Doxson, Berrios, and Cager. That Smith, of course, being Vincent Smith, not Jeff Smith, who I think will stick in the practice squad again.
Yep, I have 7 as well. I'm going with Mims, Perriman, Doxson, Vincent Smith, Crowder, Berrios, and Josh Malone. And that one I had a question mark on because you never really know how one of the UDFAs, Cager or Campbell, might work out. But then there's also the other Smith, Jeff Smith. So the 7th one will be the mystery man, but right now I think Josh Malone might have a shot just because of his measurables and deep threat ability.
Yeah, you have to like Malone's size-speed ratio, and I think Jeff Smith, listen, he's a guy like, as we've said, spent most of the season on the practice squad, got elevated, got hurt in his first game, but I liked him as a guy to stick last year on the practice squad. He did, and I think they like him. I think, as Joe Douglas said, he wants speed guys. He is absolutely a speed guy, and that gadget playability is a guy who went to Boston College, started out as a quarterback. So maybe he sticks. I'd love to see him stick. Don't have him making it now, but he's one guy. I think if you showed me the list, and because this time of year teams tend to carry like 15, 16 receivers. Having listed 7, Smith would probably be my 8th guy, and I could see him beating out a Doxson. Like I said, Doxson's the guy that I bounce back and forth. Went with him at this point, like I said, because of experience. But if some of these other guys step up in camp, I could see them moving on from Doxson and a guy like Jeff Smith making it. So we'll see what happens there. Tight ends, I've got Herndon, who, I've said a million times, to me, outside of the obvious, which is Darnold and the O-line. But to me, Herndon is the biggest X factor on the roster. What he could bring to the offense at tight end can be a huge, huge, huge difference maker. But I've got Herndon, Griffin, Wesco. I initially had 4 tight ends with Brown, but I dumped Brown and went with the 3 tight ends. What do you have, Alex?
Yeah, I was in the same wavelength as you. I went from 4 to 3, and, Gase has his guys, as we know. I feel that the potential and the financial factor that Wesco should have a spot over Daniel Brown. Think about, how stubborn Adam Gase can be. And I also think about how Wesco was not drafted by Joe Douglas. So I could see it Herndon, Griffin, and Daniel Brown, and Wesco finds himself on a new team or possibly on a practice squad of another team this year.
All right. That moves us right along to O-line, where I said, at the top of this that there were a couple guys that I knew right away that I'm viewing more as probably practice squad guys, but going out on a little bit of a limb here, having them making the roster. So, of course, you're going to have Becton and Fant, the number 1 pick and the $10 million free agent. And then I'm also going with Adoga. And Adoga, to me, I think in my mind, he's more on the bubble than a lot of people think. I think I've said a million times, he's got the feet. Does he have the strength? And the question is going to be work ethic. And you go back to his pre-draft stuff, what people from USC were saying, what some of the national folks were saying. I want to say someone said a lot of teams took him off their board completely. because of work ethic issues. So if the rumors of work ethic are true, they did not draft this guy. If he does not show up significantly stronger, I can see him being let go. But I'm going to, at the moment, give him the benefit of the doubt, hope Udoka puts in the work. And then I'm also going to have undrafted free agent Jared Hilbers out of Washington making it. Played left tackle and right tackle in college, much like Udoka, needs to get stronger, but a technically sound player who I think the Jets will like his versatility and will be a guy that they can sort of develop behind the other tackles on the roster.
Okay. And how many offensive linemen did you have total?
O-linemen total, I have 4 tackles, I have 4 guards, and I have 2 centers, so I have 10.
So you have 10. All right, I'm at 10 as well. I'm predicting that the starting offensive line is going to be Becton, Lewis, McGovern, Greg Van Roten, and George Fant will be the starting 5. Behind them, I have Cam Clark, Connor McDermott, Ben Braden, Josh Andrews, and Chuma Edoga. So I have 10 as well, just a little bit different from you, I believe.
Okay, so yeah, I've got. All right, so you went left to right. I'm going tackle, guard, center. So those are my tackles. I do like Braden. Didn't have him stick. I think he might, as I've said, he's a guy that the Jets let go of last year, but he was only gone for a couple weeks with Green Bay. And as soon as Green Bay let him go, Joe Douglas snatched him right back up. So they must like something that they see there. I don't have him making it, but I do like his chances. So but as far as for my guards, I'm going Lewis, Van Roten. I've also got McDermott, and then of course Clark. And then for center, I've got McGovern and Harrison. I just like the fact that Harrison is a more established guy as a backup, and he doesn't make a ton. He makes $2.5 million, so you're not saving a ton of money by letting him go. They may not see it that way.
They get all that back, though, right?
Correct. They would recoup that entire $2.5 million. But if you look at it now, again, having said earlier, we have no idea what the cap's going to look like. But if there are no extreme changes, $2.5 million shouldn't make a great deal of difference for the 2021 season. I mean, that's the type of money you can free up by moving a couple bucks on a long-term player deal.
I went with Josh Andrews over Jonathan Harrison mainly is because he was brought in by Joe Douglas. Mm-hmm. He's, I believe, at right around $1 million or something like that for the year. He's got guard and he has center eligibility, so there's flexibility there as well. And with him, with Harrison and Winters being cut in here, that gives the Jets $10 million on the cap as well.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from because I had that thought too. I went with Harrison because he's the more proven guy. Andrews has played only a handful of snaps in a few years in the NFL. He hasn't managed to start a game, I don't believe. He's just had some backup reps, and very few of them. So I went with the experienced guy. But listen, if Douglas did bring him in, if he likes him better, and he can save 1.5 by cutting Harrison over him, then that probably happens. On the D line, I'm carrying 7. I've got Quinnen Williams, I've got McClendon, I've got Henry Anderson, Foley Fatukasi, I've got Zuniga, Phillips, and Shepard. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys. What do you got, Alex?
We are on the same wavelength. Exact same 7 is what I have up front. Same number, same players.
All right, well, there you go. Outside linebacker, this is where they're super thin. I hope they can find a vet to bring in. I went Jenkins, Basham, Huff, and Luvu. Okay.
I have 3 because I think we're going to go a little bit heavier on the inside linebacker, which we're probably going to do next. And I have Jenkins, Basham, and Huff. And I kind of feel like you could interchange Zuniga and Huff as defensive end and outside linebacker. So, we're throwing them in these spots right now, but we don't really know, what roles they're going to have moving forward. But they're kind of tweeners, and definitely they should have some sort of role. I think Huff has got a pretty good shot out of majority of these UDFAs.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that in terms of inside linebacker, this was the position I had the most difficulty with. because you can make a really good case for like 7 guys who are good enough to stick. And I couldn't. I already know this list is wrong because there like I said, there's 7 guys who are good enough to play in the NFL. The odds of guessing the right 2 being let go are quite slim. So I went Mosley, Williamson, Hewitt, Onwuzor, and Blake Cashman. And that, of course, is largely dependent on his health. Even though I'm doing this, I feel like Burgess finds a way to stick. I didn't find a way to get him to stick on the 53 I did. Could probably make room for him. Like, honestly, looking at it now, like maybe you let Luvu go, and you keep I think if Cashman is healthy, I think we might see him more at outside linebacker, and he would bump Luvu. Not more, but he would see enough time at outside linebacker that maybe you bump Luvu, and then that's how Burgess sticks. But I've got Mosley, Williamson, Hewitt, Onwuzor, and Cashman, but I think they find a way to keep Burgess as well. What do you have at inside linebacker, Alex?
Yeah, I had a hard time with it too, and mainly because of the points that you brought up with Cashman and the fact that we could save a lot of money, and it's kind of odd, point in time in June. During free agency, they could have had these opportunities to move some players to free up cap space. So it's like, why did they sit on their hands, per se? But Williamson would be great savings if you could find a trade suitor. And we clearly know that our defense can perform well with players like Hewitt, Burgess, and Cashman in the mix. So, right now I have Mosley, Williamson, Cashman, Hewitt, and Burgess as the 5 inside linebackers. But this Peanut guy from Baltimore that they brought in, this is a Joe Douglas guy. So, again, I have a feeling that, there's a theme here with Gase and Joe Douglas that in their minds they have their own guys. So that could definitely change. And, basically went with Hewitt and Burgess from familiarity. And, they played, pretty well. They were stand-up guys for this defense last year. So I feel that what they did last year definitely – they deserve some sort of a rotational role, or, in a backup role is what they really are. But I do feel like they will get a decent amount of snaps in certain packages if they make this roster.
Yeah, and I should say, with stuff like this, even though, like, for example, I've got Brian Winters being cut, I try to limit how many transactions, predicting trades and things like that. But I should have said, in looking at Williamson, I love that he's on the roster. I think him and Mosley can be a great tandem. But I think the Jets will look to move him if he has basically, he's got to come out. And now, if there's no preseason, that changes things. There's a full, or even if there's a couple games, if he stays healthy throughout camp, doesn't miss time, plays well, they'll probably showcase him and let him play. If there's 2 preseason games, he'll probably play every snap of both games. And then you try to move him for a pick. And then Onwuzor comes in and he starts next to Mosley, and then that allows a guy like Burgess to stick, Cashman sticks, things like that. So this isn't to say moves coming, but it's you can't predict a Williamson trade now because he hasn't played, and then if there's a very abbreviated preseason, he might not play enough for teams to bite. But listen, we saw Avery Williamson play a couple seasons ago with the Jets. You can't tell me there's not a team out there that can use a player like him. And it would give up a pick. I'm not saying a premium pick. I'm not saying they're going to get a second rounder for the guy. But if you can get a fourth, yeah, I was going to say if you can get a 4th rounder for Williamson, I think you make that deal. Yeah, and then you get your guy starting next to him. And especially, and I said it. A lot of people said it. When they signed Onwuzor, a lot of people said that's it for Williamson. Like this is the guy who literally played next to Mosley in Baltimore while Joe Douglas was there, and Now they're adding him with Williamson, a guy who they can save $6.5 million by cutting or trading. So I still wouldn't rule it out. I think what's happened with me, Alex, I'm so pumped about what I think Mosley and Williamson can do. I'm trying not to even think about that Williamson deal. But when you sit down and look at the roster, yeah, I think they can be one of the better teams in the NFL up the middle, largely because of those guys. So, will there be a preseason? We don't know. if there is and he plays well, I think a deal is quite likely to free up that $6.5 million. So a couple positions to go: corner, safety, kicker, punter, long snapper. I think we can agree on the long snapper now. Alex, is that going to be Hennessy? You got Hennessy? Yeah.
That was we should have mentioned that our top three off the bat should have been kicker, long snapper, and punter, and then really a 50-man roster. So
exactly.
I built a roster without those three positions. So we'll just 1, 2, 3.
No, not predicting any surprise trades at the last second for a long snapper then.
Yep.
So corner, I have Desir, Hall, Poole, Austin, Mollett, and Wilson. Who do you got?
Desir, Poole, Mollett, Austin. Yeah, I think you have 6. I assume that you just said there. Desir, Poole, Mollett, Austin, Bryce Hall, and Quincy Wilson. That's my 6. Yeah.
Yep. All right. So we are in agreement there. And then safety,
we can
Alex.
Skip the next position.
there might be some changes here. Marcus May and Ashton Davis. There you go. That rounds up the safety position. Yeah. Jamal Adams, Marcus May, Ashton Davis.
It's like I just bit into a lemon.
What's that? I'm telling you, man.
You can see my face. It's like I bit into a lemon right now.
Yep. Adams. We'll pencil him in for the time being, but Adams, May, Davis are my 3 safeties, and we'll see how that.
I wrote in Matthias Farley. I did it. I didn't put him in there.
All right.
That's the kind of mood I'm in today, I guess. I mean,
all right.
We're human, right? We all just, we live in the moment sometimes. But, this is scary because I saw somebody just recently post like, well, at least we got Marcus May. And it's like, yeah, we got him, but he's a true free safety. He can play strong safety, but, go back and look at those games where Adams had that high ankle sprain and May had to come in and fill in for his role. You'll see that he was not as productive. He let up some catches, and he got swallowed up inside the box. He's not Jamal Adams, but he's a great free safety.
No.
And apparently this kid, Ashton Davis, is like a center fielder, like a baseball kind of track field kind of kid. So you wouldn't want to put a rookie in a Jamal Adams role, and you'd have to force May to actually play a new position. So it's a little scary, and we already know about May's injury history. So I don't like this world.
Yep. So I got Maher as the kicker instead of Ficken, and of course Mann at punter because he can boom the ball a mile, and that's not sure I can recall a time where I was looking this forward to seeing a punter, but yeah, Brett Maher is my kicker, and Mann's at punter, and Hennessy at long snapper. Yeah,
Tom Hennessy. He's been with the team a few years. Guy's solid. Does his job.
Absolutely. If you had 53 guys like him on your roster, right? Do your job right every time. So I think that wraps it up for us, Alex. We are just a smidge under an hour here. Man, what a crazy evening. But listen.
And we thought we were going to have anything to really talk about tonight, too.
Yeah, I thought, well, we'll do the 53, but there's really not any other stories to do, real-time stories. Brewing. Yeah, and then this hits. And again, it's listen, it could turn out to be nothing, but I think long-term it'll be something. It's kind of turned a corner now where it's getting ugly.
We got a few minutes here. So Glenn, let me ask you: Can Joe Douglas save this crazy fiasco that we are now back into? Can he save the day? Can he make an offer, and can he fix this tarnished relationship? Because normally when players go out vocally like this to the masses on social media, it's pretty much done. Do you think that there's any what's the percentage that you could put on it right now? Or your Vegas odds on this turning out to where 33 is playing for the Jets this season?
I'm honestly torn because my gut feeling is that Chris Johnson wants him to stay, but Adam Gase would like him to go. And I think Joe Douglas is going to, unless Chris Johnson says, I'm not letting you trade this guy, then obviously he doesn't go and Joe Douglas has to fix it. But if they let Joe Douglas do what Joe Douglas wants to do, And as I said, he's got to try to. His job is to get good players, but I think he's going to want to do as much as he can to give Adam Gase what he wants. And I think if Adam Gase is like, look, man, I don't want this guy in my locker room. A lot of talk about being a leader, but the reality of it, he's not. You know, I said that last year at the deadline. A lot of the antics to me were like the antithesis of a leader. So I don't see him that way. I don't think Gase sees him that way. And I think if odds of him returning, I'd say 20%. Again, unless Chris Johnson absolutely insists and says, no, you're not trading this guy. As we know, these things can drag out for a long time.
Stock.
Well, I'll tell you what, just a quick note here, just tweeted out by Rich Cimini. I'll read it verbatim here. The Jamal Adams trade request is the first big test for GM Joe Douglas. Does he trade his best player or hold firm? Know this. Teams already are showing interest. A trade for draft picks does not help them in 2020. In that case, he should have done it. And I'm guessing he's going to say, let's see, in that case, he should have done it before the draft. If he opts for a trade, the package needs to include a quality player. This is something I've said. I want a starting player to be included in any deal. The Jets shouldn't be in a hurry. They have the leverage. Know this. Oh, so according to Cimini, he says, I know this. They are not happy with his behavior. So
they have every right to be unhappy with the way he's conducted himself.
Yeah, and listen, I always say I don't mind the guy holding out, but really, see, this is even now that the deals are sort of pre-structured. I used to always say I have no issue with a guy holding out as a rookie. Like, especially a first rounder, when you know you have leverage, get as much as you can. But in this case, I mean, I understand. Here's the thing: I understand that Jamal Adams wants his money. Listen, we would all like a huge pay raise tomorrow, but we're not all as good at our jobs as Jamal is. So he's got leverage in that sense. However, the Jets hold all the cards. The Jets have control for the next 2 to 3 years. So all this constant, we've talked about it before, the cryptic tweets and the roundabout way. I mean, at least now he's just coming out and saying it. Before it was like there was always like a little drip drop here and there about how he felt, where you could kind of read it a couple different ways. Now he is just coming out and saying it. I want out. I want out now. If you don't want to give me a deal, send me to another team. And here are some teams that I don't want to deal from right away because I want to be with those teams. So he doesn't want to be a Jet. The Jets have all the leverage. But listen, Joe Douglas, if you're a GM rebuilding a team, you'd love to have a guy like Jamal Adams, but you might also like the idea of a few extra draft picks and a couple premium picks and maybe a starter heading into the draft next year. But plenty left to happen. Plenty of time for something to happen. But Alex, we've got a few seconds here, so I'm going to throw that question back to you. What do you think? What number do you put on it? What percentage chance is Jamal Adams a Jet next year? And then we will sign off for the evening.
20% sounds like the right number, but for me, I think it's. I want them to take the stance at this point, and you played your hand. You decided to be unprofessional and go on social media and rant, and you requested and you demanded a trade as if we've insulted you somehow, when it looks like you're just reacting to, social media trolls. So I hope they take a good stance on this. I don't think that right now, as of today, that they can fix this relationship. I don't know if there's any amount of money right now today that will make him happy, but I could be wrong. So I don't think this bodes well, and I don't think the chances of him playing this year are very good right now. But I do hope that the Jets exercise their rights as they have, what we talked about, tagging him and having him hold out and finding him and things like that, and forcing his hand. That may be the only play that they have left at this point. And, I'm hoping that they figure out a way, but I do have my doubts.
All right, Jets fans, we will catch you next week. Have a good one.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at JetNation Radio. Glenn is at AceFan23 and Alex is at NYJetsLife24.
Until next time,
go Jets!